first up, we are on Paxton Tactics session number 5, and we're going to be talking about taking the roof off today. Does anybody know what taking the roof off means?
I read it.
Well, I am glad nobody knows what it means at this point. Otherwise, this might be redundant for you. So hopefully this will be a lot of new stuff. And if not completely new, then hopefully we'll be able to give you a little bit of understanding. So as is our normal practice, we need to give credit where credit is due. The materials that we'll be covering tonight are from Greg Koukl's Tactics, a game plan for discussing your Christian convictions. And as you guys know, Greg is the founder and president of Stand to Reason and a fantastic Christian apologist. He and his team have a crazy amount of helpful material and deeper training on tactics and all sorts of other topics impactful to Christians today. So check out their website at str.org and mark it as one of your favorites. And don't ever forget that we have a Christianity worth thinking about. All right. Also, as is our practice, we're going to review and find out if anybody retained anything we talked about last week. Yep, it's that time. All right. First up, describe the suicide tactic and why it works.
Takes advantage of the tendency, the erroneous points of view have to self-destruct. That's my note taking. Ask the question again.
Describe the suicide tactic and why it works. Any takers online?
It has something to do with letting their ideas kind of implode, but I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah.
My erroneous points of view, tendency to self-destruct or something like that. I got this, it's wrote so neat, but still seem like it's out of order or something.
No, I think you're spot on. So the answer to that is the suicide tactic takes advantage of the tendency of some points of view to self-destruct. These views are self-refuting and defeat themselves by violating the law of non-contradiction.
You know, those words had too many syllables in them.
Did they? I'm sorry.
For erroneous.
Erroneous. Error.
All right, prof.
Prof, no, ma'am. No. No title dessert here.
Well, I didn't.
Prophet Bennett.
No, definitely not a prophet.
I didn't mean
No, sir.
Professor.
Yeah.
Professori.
Yeah. Professoriate. Yeah. So anyway, bonus question. Does anybody remember what the law of non-contradiction states? How do the philosophers say it?
Every statement is about something.
That's true, but that's not what the law of non-contradiction states.
I can't ever find. I write all this stuff down, then I can't find it when I. Yeah.
There's no special formula. Wait, that's demonstrate and master. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I think that was 2 sessions ago. We talked about that.
I just wrote down what we had on the board last week. So,
Okay, Sunday.
I think Dadrin is closer to a professor than I. Do you happen to remember what the law of non-contradiction is?
Things cannot be both A and not A at the same time and in the same sentence.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it.
Okay, well, if he's a professor, then okay, then you gotta be the prophet then.
No, I'm like the student learner. What do they call that? Student? I don't know, something. It's been way too long since I was in college.
Scholar.
No. Perpetual student. How about that? All right. Moving on. Next question. What are the 2 steps to recognize when a point commits suicide?
Okay, say it one more time.
What are the 2 steps to recognize when a point commits suicide?
I'm not even gonna say anything because I have not been pointed on it. So
That's all right. Re-engaging the mind.
suicide tactic, Colombo tactic, but I don't think we need that far down yet. So. I think it's out there.
I wrote so many different ones. I'm like, oh, should I go for it?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna just throw one out there.
All right.
I just say, what I wrote down is, it might be an example, but it says, I never repeat a word, never. Like so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of those.
That was one of the examples we had.
Yeah, those are an example. So I just want to throw one out there.
So how would you recognize that statement as having committed suicide?
Explicit contradictions, implicit contradictions.
Because he said never and then he said it again. I mean,
It's almost like a double negative that you can prove to be false.
Yeah, I think that's pretty close. All right. Step 1. Hi, how are you? We're just getting started. All right. So first step is to identify the basic premise, conviction, or claim. It's not always obvious. That's the first step.
Oh, I had that right under what I just said.
Oh, okay.
Ask yourself if the claim undermines yourself.
Well, I think that's number 2. Ask
Oh, I had
yourself.
that too.
See, you guys just weren't in the right spot. All right, so the 2 steps to recognize when a point to commit suicide is first, identify the basic premise, conviction, or claim. It's not always obvious, but it's there. And then ask yourself if the claim undermines itself. Like, I never repeated a word, never. That claim undermines itself, right? All right, next up, describe the sibling rivalry.
Sometimes objections come in pairs that are logically inconsistent with each other. This puts in the Bible. Am I close? Is this possible?
Yes, ma'am. We are doing the kind of the review.
which we aren't doing very well with.
No, Miss Tamika is getting back into Gold Star mode.
Notes, notes, and notes.
Absolutely. Notes, notes, and more notes. Okay, so if you guys didn't hear it, Miss Tamika described the sibling rivalry suicide as the statement contains objections in pairs that are logically inconsistent with each other. The example we looked at was a conversation between a Christian and a Hindu regarding whether or not Gandhi was in heaven, whether he was in heaven or not, because he was good enough, though according to his view, good is subjective. So there's no real good way to tell whether or not he was actually good enough. All right, so that's our,
That's not why we go to heaven,
what?
that we're not, whether we're good. I mean,
Nope.
we go to heaven because we believe in Jesus.
Yeah, if our level of goodness was the determining factor for us going to heaven,
Nobody be there.
nobody.
We all lose.
Yeah, we all lose. And the problem with that, and I'm going to chase a rabbit for a second because I think this is common. You know, we hear a lot of people talk about, I'm no Mother Teresa, but I'm no Hitler either. So I'm somewhere in between and I'm closer to Mother Teresa than I am Hitler. So I should be okay. Right? So we like to measure ourselves against other people. And we usually have two extremes in the people we do that with. And Mother Teresa and Hitler seem to be kind of the two that are easiest to grab a hold of.
Yeah, the problem is that God won't permit sin in heaven.
Well, that's not the problem with that statement. The problem
and-
with that statement is that it's measuring level of goodness on a horizontal scale.
Right, no, but I'm saying, so if he doesn't permit sin, period, then it doesn't matter whether it's a flea sin or a elephant sin, you know. So if that was how we were measured to get into heaven, is how big our sin is, then
Yes.
that'd be fine, but that's not,
Right,
that's
yeah.
not, that's
So-
not the ruler.
So in essence, one sin is enough to keep you out of heaven.
Yeah,
Right.
if that's what the criteria
Right.
for getting into heaven was, yeah.
And that lends to the idea of it's not a horizontal scale. So
Yeah.
it's not my Hitler and my Mother
Yeah.
Teresa. I'm somewhere over here. I should be okay. I'm over here. I may have some fire in my future. The problem is that it's a vertical scale and the bar is set at Christ. And unless you meet that standard of perfection, then you're not good enough, period. So you need that substitutionary death and atonement of Christ. And that's our only entrance into
That's where people
salvation.
get in trouble when they say, am I good enough? There's no such thing.
Right, right.
That you've already messed up.
Oh, I know. Yeah, and I actually had a conversation with somebody who said, we were talking about higher things, and she said to me, she said, well, in the end of it all, I can only hope that I was just good enough. And I said, you're in trouble.
Good.
None of us are good enough.
Good.
Right.
Thank goodness it's not what we deserve. It's what was fought for us.
I thank God I don't get what I deserve,
Me neither.
because I know what I deserve. And it-
Isn't there a scripture, where it say that some will barely be making it in, like the scripture, you know, the scripture I'm talking about?
Yes, yeah, there is one that talks about you will have just made it in, even if you smell like smoke on the way in. And I should have that reference.
That's in the Bible.
It is, yeah, but it's talking about the rewards that we'll get in
Yeah.
heaven,
Yeah.
right? So there will be kind of a purifying fire, and what's burned away will be straw and rubble, the kind of things that didn't make any difference. What will remain are the things that you did for eternity. So there will be crowns and jewels and things like that. So there are some people who will pass through that fire and come out smelling like smoke, but have nothing to show for it.
Mhm.
So that's really the premise there, is that, there are rewards in heaven in addition to being in heaven. And I can tell you that if I smell like smoke, I'm in heaven. So I'm good.
No.
And that, well, it's never good enough.
Smell myself, let's see.
Yeah, do we smell like smoke? Okay,
Smell some smoke on me?
Thank you.
maybe the wrong kind of smoke.
Right.
So, yeah. All right, so anybody have the opportunity to use their tactical skills since last we met?
No, thank goodness I never see anybody.
But that's okay. Sometimes you could be watching TV.
You're hoping for that? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, heck yeah, because then they won't, nobody will know how stupid I really.
Oh, stop.
Oh.
Well, just that, just that brief.
You smarter than you think,
moment,
sweetie.
Hmm.
When I text you about the difference in, the religions and everything.
Yes.
Where, that guy was like, he was Catholic and he was like, I want a Christian woman. And I was like,
Hmm?
I said, if you don't mind me asking, no offense, but how are you Catholic and want a Christian woman? And he just like deleted me.
Oh, really? Just that quick?
Yeah, he-
Oh,
I was
wow.
like, oh, wow.
You mad, bro?
Wow, that's interesting.
You are not hurting my feelings. Like,
Yeah, that's okay.
hey, you were not hurting my feelings. That just
Right.
lets me know that just to be skipped right on over. So like, I'm not trying to do a battle of religions and stuff anyway. So yeah, like, and that's weird.
Right.
I haven't had a date since 2010. So I was like, oh no, that's weird. That's weird.
Yeah,
That's weird.
I think there are some people that would have the opinion of you're not missing anything.
Yeah, exactly.
I think sometimes it's more trouble than you want. So one thing I would encourage you guys to do is, even if you don't have conversations about these things with other people,
Mhm.
listen to what's being said around you, whether it's a podcast, a TV show, the news at night. There's always, I don't care what news source you're listening to, they all have a bias. They all have some kind of opinion or something they're trying to promote or get or persuade you to do. So use your tactical skills, and if you do that kind of thing on the regular, then it will help you do it if you have the opportunity to do that live with someone.
I say the new word. What is Anglican?
Anglican.
Yeah, what? is
Wow,
that?
where did that come from?
It's a religion that showed up on there and I, Googled it
Mhm.
and to see what it was, and I was like,
I think that's what they call Episcopalian over in England. You've never heard of the Episcopal Church?
My,
yeah,
No.
they have them in North Dallas.
It's kind of like a cousin to the Catholics.
it's kind of, yeah,
Oh, I was like, who?
it's kind of like Catholic light.
Yes.
Oh.
So,
Well,
there's,
it's like all the, like Lutheran and Episcopal and Catholic, they're all kind of,
Like the same?
and
well, they're not the same, but they all have masses, they all have, formulas for
Okay.
Yeah.
worship. I
Greek
mean, well, we all have
Orthodox,
formulas for worship,
yeah,
but it's,
there's,
they're pretty, the only thing is that they don't follow the Pope in Rome,
Right. Right.
But that's,
so if you walked into a Catholic church, walked out the door, closed your eyes, walked into an Episcopalian church, you probably wouldn't know the difference between
Oh,
them.
okay.
yeah.
They're that close. They're very similar.
I think that Episcopalian
Learn something new every day. I'm
ministers
like,
can
who?
marry though.
I think that's
they
probably
can.
true. And there's
And I
probably a
think
few others.
Lutheran too.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling the Catholics are gonna give me it, because they've had too many issues.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of news speak of what's been behind the scenes of what's been going on in Catholic wise. Behind.
Forever,
yeah,
I'm like,
right.
forever, dear, forever.
All right.
I had an opportunity, but I didn't take it because I wanted more time to think about what was being said. One of my managers at work said that she doesn't believe in the Bible because there are too many interpretations, too many different interpretations.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't want to engage her at that time. I know that I'll see her again, so I wanted more time to think about it. But as I was on my way here, I found an article on the Gospel Coalition that I sent over to her that talks about that very thing. And I was like, well, anything I can say.
Is
they
she
can
talking
say
about
better.
translations?
Just people draw, not necessarily translations, although one person that was present did say that, but just the fact that, you and I can read the same book
Oh,
and draw different interpretations on baptism and the means of salvation, all of that.
yeah.
So she said that's one reason why she doesn't read the Bible, or I think that to some degree she may be Christian,
So,
maybe a nominal Christian.
so does she read anything?
No.
She doesn't read anything at all? What about M&Ps at work or
Oh, you're talking
emails?
about anything other than the Bible?
Anything, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm
So
sure she does.
why doesn't that same principle hold true for everything else that she reads, that she holds the Bible to?
Right.
Because everything you read, texts, one of my big bugaboos with texts is you can't get tonality over a text. There are some people who lock the caps and do all their texting, and then does that mean they're screaming at me? If I give you some sarcasm, well, are they really mad? Are you really calling me dumb? Whatever the case may be.
Right.
So anything that's in print can be misinterpreted, can be read differently by two different people.
Right.
So,
I thought about something similar. I thought about something similar on my way here as to how two people can watch the same movie and draw a different interpretation of it.
Mhm.
Like, that when you go to see a movie that's in theaters, that different people take different things from the movie, but is that going to stop you from wanting to go and view that movie? No. If you hear good things about the movie, you're likely to see it, even if two people receive two different interpretations from it.
Absolutely.
So
That's why I
that's
don't go
one
by
response I'm
reviews all
going
the
to share.
time.
Yeah.
Because it's the same with a restaurant also. Somebody might give a review of, hey, that food was bad, don't eat this, don't eat that, but then, I go in there and I'll be like, okay, well, I eat it and be like, oh, that was really good. That was,
Comes
so
back to taste buds.
yeah, so you really just can't really go, always go by what somebody has said, because like you said, it is too, they might have two different interpretations.
Right.
It depends on what's important.
Yeah.
to
True.
you.
Mhm.
The translations themselves, someone said the same, something similar to that, because you have NIV, King James, you have
exactly.
New
Yeah,
English, you have this, and you have this, and you have this. and you have-
And
I've
like,
heard
oh my
that
God.
before too.
I've
It's
heard that, and it's
in
like-
Genesis about the fall. They said, when they said this, I'm like, it says the same thing, just King James, and it's the same thing though. Cause the discussion was about the fall in Genesis 3.
Mhm.
And they felt like, well,
You love that verse,
No,
don't
no,
you?
no.
He said that last
No,
time.
no, no,
He
no.
loves that verse.
No,
That is
because-
his favorite.
I mean, it is like, I love Genesis, but that was always an interpretation I've always got from people. They've always asked the same thing, why sin is here? And I say, well, read Genesis 3, because I've had so many different people ask me that. So I'm like,
Right.
read it, but they still don't understand the interpretation of it. They
Right.
still think, well, they blame Eve more than anything. They blame her. I'm like, well, if you read it, Adam was right beside her too, so you can't necessarily blame her all the way.
I blame the
Stick it in
snake.
his mouth.
Yeah,
right.
so.
I blame the snake. He lied.
Yeah, it's not the snake's fault. It's Adam and Eve.
Yeah, but if he had to stay down in his hole.
Mm.
Hey, I didn't find out till I was grown that it didn't say he bit an apple, that they bit an apple.
Yeah, it
It
wasn't
said
an apple.
fruit.
Yeah.
It said fruit, and I didn't find out till I was grown, and I literally almost got jumped on
Yeah.
in church because I asked the question. So when Adam and Eve bit the apple, it's like, apple?
Well,
Who
that's
does-
just,
like-
that's the fruit they always seem to.
Yeah,
show.
anytime you see a picture or drawing, whatever,
So-
it's always an apple.
Whoever was drawing that picture
Right.
didn't
I
like
need
apples.
my life behind it.
And I know we need to get back to this, but another commentary, and I'm just saying that there's a particular kind of computer where their logo is an apple with a bite out of it. So their whole thing is original sin. So you might want to go PC. That's all I'm saying. All right.
Oh. Okay.
All right, so let's review. Last week, or during our last session, we learned the nature of self-refuting claims. Suicidal views express contradictory concepts, and suicidal views are necessarily false.
I think you need to change that word to we talked about. Learn is a little
Oh,
strong.
Really? Okay. Well, if you take good notes and you go home and you review your notes.
Don't though.
Oh, but here's the thing. These are posted online too, so you
I
can
know.
watch them again and again and again. You can fall asleep to my dulcet tones. Self-refuting claims, yes. All right, and then we learned or talked about how to recognize when someone else's view self-destructs. First, we pay attention to the basic premise, conviction, or claim. Then we determine if the claim undermines itself. We ask, does this statement satisfy its own requirements? Does it have any internal conversations? Like Xavier said, I never repeat a word, never. It doesn't satisfy its own claims, right? Next, we examined examples of popular ideas that commit suicide and learned how to respond to them. A couple that we looked at was it's work to try to change other people's religious views. All religions are equally true and valid. You can only know what's been proven by science. And then finally, we learned how to recognize sibling rivalry suicide. This, this kind of suicide happens when pairs of objections are logically inconsistent with each other. We learned we can eliminate at least one of the objections by pointing out the conflict. All right. Now, in this session, we will talk about taking the roof off. And here's kind of a brief what's coming. So we'll see how some points of view logically lead to unacceptable conclusions. Then we'll learn how to recognize those views and how to reduce them to their absurd consequences. All right, philosophy quiz. What's that called?
A non-sequitur.
It's the Latin term.
Non-sequitur. Non-sequitur.
Non-secular.
That's not the term I'm looking for.
So I'm thinking, okay, so the first one I know is a non sequitur.
Right.
The second one, recognize those views and how to reduce them to their absurd consequences.
Right.
I can't think of it. I can't think of that one.
Is there a ad absurdum? Is that what you're thinking of?
Look at you, reductio ad absurdum.
Oh.
Professor Pugh is in the house.
I remember that. That,
I'm your TA. That's the word you were looking for earlier. The TA. Yeah,
Assistant.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Boy, I'm taking a backseat to all of y'all. All right. So Ransom's working on a gold star too. All right. And then we'll see how man made in God's image makes this tactic possible. And then finally, we'll look at some specific examples of popular ideas that will lead you over a cliff if you follow them. And then I'll show you how to take the roof off of them. All right, so taking the roof off. Taking the roof off tactic is a simple technique used with great skill by Francis Schaeffer. Does anybody know who Francis Schaeffer is? No? No, I don't think we've talked about him in here.
no, I said, it probably talked about
Oh,
him in this.
well, in the book, yes.
In the chapter I read that I don't remember any
Oh,
of it now. yes.
okay. Well,
We
let me-
watched some Francis Schaeffer videos in high school, actually, back in the day. So I'm vaguely familiar with him.
okay, who is he?
He's I don't know exactly. I guess he's something of a sort of a theologian / philosopher. I don't remember a whole lot, but I do remember one particular video where he was, I don't know, he was an older generation type of guy, and so he was wearing kind of old-fashioned clothing. And I remember a video where he and another guy were trying to walk across a bridge, but there wasn't room enough for the both of them, and Francis Schaeffer just shoved the other guy off.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it was pretty. But yeah, I guess he's like a sort of a theologian, philosopher type of fellow.
You're absolutely correct. He's an American evangelical theologian, philosopher, and a Presbyterian pastor.
And he wrote God, the God who is there. That's what it says.
Okay, he wrote The God Who Is There, so he's an author too.
Yeah, the author.
And apparently he likes to push people off of bridges.
Well, Bridges. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. And what,
Okay.
and what,
Occasionally.
Yeah, it's occasional. It's not every
was it
time.
the guy disagreed with him?
Apparently there just wasn't enough room for both of them.
Oh,
Somebody had to
He-
go.
Yeah, he would do a lot of funny little skits, sort of demonstrating various points.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay. So it wasn't, he was just being malicious. Yeah, I was worried as well. All right, so let me see if I did this right. I don't think I did. All right. So consider the tactic in brief. First, oh, I did do it right. Yay. First, you adopt the other person's viewpoint for sake of argument. Then you press them to the logical and absurd consequences of their view. And we're going to talk more about this. So I don't want you guys to get lost in that just yet.
We've actually already seen an example of that in the Gandhi in heaven back and forth. Pardon me. Or if you say that all morality is subjective, like believing that Gandhi must have gone to heaven because he was a good person, and then saying that all morality is subjective, that leads you to an absurd conclusion.
Absolutely. And we'll see more of that tonight. Right along those same lines. So the technical or Latin term for that is reductio ad absurdum, or simply reductio. And I know it sounds like it, but it was not said by this guy. Sorry, little dad joke there.
Oh,
Waving that wand around saying reductio ad absurdum.
I was literally just thinking it sounded like a Harry Potter spell.
Really? It wasn't too far off.
Yep, the joke landed for me.
Oh man, yeah, that's
Look at that.
yeah.
Katie said exactly the same thing.
I haven't purchased the book yet, but I think that one thing that you have to be careful with here is that you don't create a straw man fallacy, that you don't commit the straw man fallacy.
Mhm. That is true. So do you want to talk to us about what the straw man fallacy is?
Strawman fallacy is when you create a caricature of someone's argument, like you say that they believe something that, not that they really don't believe, but that you know nobody really holds that position. And so instead of arguing against what that person is actually saying, you're arguing against this caricature that you've made of their argument.
Right. Yeah, and the idea behind that is with a straw man, it's easy to tear down. So you're taking somebody else's view and you're kind of putting a paper copy of it up so that you can rip it to shreds easily.
Right.
The better way to do that is the steel man. So take like the most solid form of their argument and then tear that down. It's another philosophical aside. No charge for that, guys. All right, so let's talk about, before I get there, the point of this tactic is to see if the person can really live in the kind of world he is affirming. Can he live with the moral and intellectual rules seriously and applying them consistently to show that they are inadequate or absurd? The taking the roof off tactic makes it clear that certain arguments prove too much. The goal here is to show that one has to pay too high a price to hold certain views. All right, so here is how to take off the roof of someone's argument step by step. First, reduce the point of view to its basic premise, assertion, principle, or moral rule. And again, I'm just giving you guys kind of the rules, and then we'll dig into it as we move forward. Second, give the idea a test drive and see where it goes by asking, if I follow this principle consistently, what would be the result? Or do any absurd consequences result when this view is consistently applied? Or does this rule have any other unintended consequences that seem counterintuitive? Okay. So again, you want to make sure that when you are following this technique, like Dadrin said, you're not erecting a straw man, but a steel man. And then third, invite the person to think about the implications of his view if it were really true. And if I'm going too fast for you guys online, let me know. And I'm allowing in here too. I am watching and seeing people take notes, so I'm trying to pause appropriately. All right. So let's see what old Francis Schaeffer has to say about this. And Ransom was correct. He's kind of a strange looking bird. He dressed weird. He had weird hair, and he had, you know, kind of a, I don't know, what is that, a Kentucky Fried Chicken Colonel beard thing going on?
Yeah.
All right. So Francis Schaeffer, or Mr. Schaeffer, as no one refers to him, every man has built a roof over his head to shield himself at the point of tension. The Christian lovingly, that's an important word, lovingly must remove the shelter or the roof and allow the truth of the external world and of what man is to beat upon him. When the roof is off, each man must stand naked and wounded before the truth of what is. He must come to know that the roof is a false protection from the storm of what is.
Okay, that's supposed to be point of tension.
What did I say?
Well, it says
Pint. It
on
does say pint. Wow.
Mhm.
Yes.
But it's supposed to be point.
Francis, you messed up, man. No, it's totally me. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I'm just going, you did say point, right?
Yeah.
Careful the next time you see Francis on a bridge, Chris.
I know. I'm going in the drink. Just like that. Okay. So in essence, what he's saying here is when you find a place where tension exists, exploit it gently but directly. This is where a well-placed question like Columbo tactic number 3 can be really effective. And your goal is not to cause the non-Christian, or is to cause the non-Christian a little pain or push him off balance and direct him towards logic, actually the illogic of his espoused views. Still allowing for some notes to be taken.
I took pictures, I can write it later.
I think that's good. I think that's a wise use of technology. All right. So real quick, an ambassador skill tip. To press a person's view to its logical or absurd conclusion, you must first understand the view. Use your Columbo tactics to probe for the details until you have a good grasp of the person's point. Then you will be able to, you will be in the best position to assess it and, if possible, refute it. So again, listening is key and understanding what the other person is saying. And if you don't understand what they're saying, ask more questions. Keep digging. So here's another important point in taking the roof off. Everyone who rejects Christianity must believe in something. There isn't anyone who believes in nothing. All right. There is no philosophical neutral ground on this matter. Even the person who refuses to decide must defend their agnosticism. If they reject Christianity in favor of some other belief, like skepticism, this leaves them open to the golden rule of apologetics. Ask others as they ask of you. They need to help you understand why their belief is more reasonable than Christianity. All right, let's look at an example of the example of Jesus. And we're calling this equivalent to him taking the roof off. He obviously didn't call it that, but this is just him responding. Okay, so in Matthew 12:22-26, then a demon-oppressed man who was blind and mute was brought to him, and he healed him, speaking of Jesus, so that the man spoke and saw. And all the people were amazed and said, "Can this be the son of David?" But when the Pharisees heard it, they said, "It's only Beelzebul, the prince of demons, that this man casts out demons." Knowing their thoughts, he said to them, "Every kingdom divided against itself is laid to waste, and no city or house divided against itself will stand. And if Satan casts out Satan, he is divided against himself. How then will his kingdom stand?"
Yeah, I forgot what that whole verse said, because I was about to say, how can he be Satan and cast out? But, oh, whatever.
Well, you're getting to Jesus's point. Jesus's point was that if I'm Satan, how can I cast me out? So in essence, what he was doing is following what they were saying to its absurd conclusion. And that absurd conclusion is no house divided against itself will stand. Does that make sense to you guys online? Excellent. All right. Let's take a look at a few examples.
Yes.
Thank you. Let's look at a few examples of taking the roof off. So consider the primary way people argue in favor of homosexuality. People often justify homosexuality by claiming that they were born with the natural tendency for it. They take this claim as a moral justification for their behavior. It does not follow, though, that a natural urge for something means that it's okay to fulfill that urge. It could be argued using this line of reason that I have a natural tendency to beat up homosexuals, then gay bashing should be morally acceptable. So here's kind of the way that looks. All right, here's a conversation between a man and a Christian woman. So the man says, "I was born this way." All right, let's just say he's homosexual. Okay, so a homosexual man says, "I was born this way." So the Christian woman would respond, "If I were born with a natural impulse to beat up homosexuals, would that make gay bashing morally acceptable?" What do you guys think? He's claiming that it's natural to be that way. And since it's natural, it's okay for him to be that way. So the logical conclusion of that is that if whatever is natural as a natural impulse or something is okay for me to do, like it's my natural impulse to rape someone. It's my natural impulse to beat somebody up. It's my natural impulse to steal. So does it make sense then that because it's natural, that it's morally acceptable?
No.
No, you're absolutely right.
We wouldn't live in a civilization if we let people
But
just.
that's faulty logic.
It is faulty logic. You're absolutely correct. It is faulty logic. So let's look at this. Okay, this is called the is-ought fallacy.
I was just about to say that. The naturalistic fallacy.
That's exactly it. It's clearly appealing to the alleged natural tendency is not adequate to show that someone's behavior is okay. This confuses what is with what ought to be. And this is called the is-ought fallacy or the naturalistic fallacy. The is-ought fallacy occurs when the assumption is made that because things are a certain way, that they should be that way. Have you guys seen society today, the way things are? And do you agree that the way things are the way they should be?
Yeah.
Like, I hate to say gas prices,
That's $4.09 a gallon.
unbelievable.
That's
I think
crazy.
I'm about to
haven't
get
seen
my
gas that
bike
high.
out the closet.
Probably,
Yeah, well, give it time. I have a feeling it's going to get worse. Okay, so it can also consist of the assumption that because something is not occurring, that it means it should not occur. In effect, the fallacy asserts that the status quo should be maintained simply for its own sake. It seeks to make a value of the fact or to derive a moral imperative from a description of a state of affairs. So why do you argue about whether abortion is moral? It's legal, isn't it? That commits the is-ought fallacy. So because it's legal doesn't make it moral. Our country's history is full of examples of legal wrongs. So the point of morality is to curb natural impulses that are wrong. Animals always do what's come naturally, and that's not the same rule for humans. Have you guys ever seen an animal court of law? Does a lion ever get locked up for eating an antelope? No, doesn't happen.
It's part of the food chain.
It's part of the,
It's just part of the food chain, like.
they're doing what comes naturally to them, so they can't be held morally
Yes, that
responsible.
makes sense for you to do that. Does that make sense for you to go to the other church?
That's, oh, I wish you'd tell that to my teenager. I agree with you, but boys.
Hey, sometimes you just gotta go.
Oh, not you two. All right.
Hey, I'm just being honest. I mean,
Well,
sometimes you can't.
it could put a diaper on you.
That's just weird.
That's
Well,
what I did to my son. I did. He's out there and he wasn't a baby. He
Oh,
was-
no.
I'm going, okay, fine. You wanna pee wherever you want to? Here.
Wow.
It worked. He
Okay.
never peed anywhere, but where he was supposed to.
That's
I'm
good.
going, I'm sorry, but I mean,
Yeah.
You didn't realize it would just take the diaper off? Or
I was standing there.
Mm. Wow.
I was
Okay.
mean. I was mean. I'm sorry. I was mean.
So here's another way to state what we just talked about. So the basic premise is any natural tendency or behavior is morally acceptable. So here's the reductio. The reductio is if gay bashing is natural for me, then it's okay. That's not gay basing, it's bashing. So I'm sorry.
You were tired.
I don't know what I was.
You
I was
were in a
probably,
hur- You were in a hurry.
I was probably in a hurry.
You just kept dropping these letters.
Well, yeah, and I just, I was economizing my letters.
Exactly.
Marijuana smokers.
Yes.
I mean, it does.
Hmm.
That is natural. What
Right.
you got from it? Can't say anything else.
Yeah.
I'm not saying.
No,
You
and
do that a lot.
I have heard that a lot too. It's, marijuana is natural.
It's a natural product.
Well, is it natural to set it on fire and inhale it? No. Do you ever do that with a campfire? No,
I mean, poison ivy is natural. but I don't
Yeah,
think I
well,
want anything to do
try
with it.
setting that on fire and inhaling it. Yeah.
Boy.
I think you're gonna have a lot more problems than you think you're gonna have.
Mhm.
All right.
Turn my lips.
So the basic premise is all natural tendencies or behaviors are morally acceptable. And if that's the case, the reductio is if gay bashing is natural for me, then it's okay. So the truth is, just because it's natural doesn't mean it's moral.
What if the premise is changed to not any, but this natural tendency, this natural tendency, or this natural tendency and many others are morally acceptable?
Well, what would be the arbiter of truth on that? What would make one natural impulse morally acceptable over another natural impulse?
I'm trying to see what else could be brought in. That would certainly be an inductive argument. You
Mhm.
would have to bring in something else.
Right. Yeah, and you're moving away from the objective into the subjective. And anytime you start putting subjectivity in that, you're going to end up in a situation like, that's your truth. It's not my truth.
Right.
You know, it's natural for me to speed. That's my truth. That's not your truth. Good. But Mr. Officer, don't pull me over and give me a ticket because that's my natural tendency is to speed. I don't think that's going to work very well for me.
And it's my
No,
natural.
and that's just wrong.
I have this tendency to hand these things out just for fun.
Yeah. All right. That was the is ought. Now let's look at the minimalist ethic. The minimalist ethic says that any behavior is okay as long as we're not hurting anyone. What do you guys think about that before we get into this? What is your natural reaction to that?
You're hurting yourself and somebody.
Yeah.
Question that your morals too. Does that make it okay?
Yeah.
Yes. That's what my friend was telling me last night when I was hammering on the wall at 11 o'clock. I said, look, these neighbors are making noise all hours of the night, and I'm not concerned with things like this, if they do, right? So, whatever, I'm still gonna nail it. But I can. They did it this week.
That's true. That's absolutely true. And that's something, I've got to deal with, younger children all the time because they did it doesn't mean you can do it. All right, so let me see if. Okay, so this moral system cannot survive because it justifies things like peeping Toms. I'm looking in a woman's window at night while she's undressing. Is that hurting anyone? No.
Yes.
Nobody's getting hurt by that.
It's hurting my privacy though.
Excuse me, you're freaking me out. That's
Well-
hurting me.
I know, but that's,
You're not supposed to know that.
well, yeah.
You're not supposed,
Right.
you're not supposed to know that I'm being watched, right?
You ought not be doing that, first of all, but yeah, if this person, a professional Tom peeper, you probably wouldn't know you were being watched. But if you didn't know you were being watched, does that make it right?
No,
No, it's still wrong.
you're invading my personal space with your eyes.
Right. Yeah. All right, so that's kind of one natural conclusion.
Cause ain't that lust, part of lust?
Oh, yeah.
If you're looking at somebody, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to that. And I just had a conversation with my son about that too. And, talking about young ladies wearing things where just more things are being seen than should be seen. So yeah, but it all kind
I
of
mean,
goes,
That was funny.
I mean, yeah, in it, maybe.
I'm
in
trying to
its-
be,
I
yeah.
want you to look at those though, okay? But they're right there, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, I know. She should be covering them up. Save those for your husband.
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get a blanket, something.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. All right. So peeping Toms, what about sexual assault on an unconscious victim?
Oh my gosh. Tell me about some-
That's just sick.
It is sick. You're right.
That's just sick.
It happens though.
Yeah, it happens because
There was a boy at Stanford.
Oh, really?
I can't remember his name, but it happened at Stanford. I think he got off of probation or something. But yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because they say they can't consent, and that's,
Right.
can't consent, then.
So if it's not hurting that person, doesn't make it okay. The answer is no.
No.
Right. All right. So what if that person, was hurt? All right, well, let's take it to another absurdity. What about necrophilia?
That's disgusting.
that's just right.
That
is. All of these things, we're taking it to the absurd conclusion, but if it's natural for you to do this, well, all right, if it's a natural impulse, then, let's take it all the way down. All right.
That's just sad.
Yeah, there's a
It
movie
is.
I watched called Contracted, and
Yeah, that
you
movie
know,
is.
that happened. He did that, the guy, and he ended up spreading it. It was just disgusting.
Yeah.
It was on Netflix for a
Disgusting.
long time
Well.
until they took it off.
It was on Netflix for like 3 years, and then they made a part 2 to it. That was just.
Yeah, they.
Yeah, we didn't get enough of the down and dirty in the first one. so
Right.
we had-
Oh,
Well,
and in the movie T. That was degrading too. T.
yeah. Well,
Gee, I've missed so many good movies.
well, it's
You ain't missing nothing on that.
yeah,
I
it's
know.
bad
That
enough
was-
that these things do happen. It's a whole
And then they
other,
make a movie.
yeah, and then you glorify it by making a movie out of
Oh
it.
my God.
Or, plant the seed for somebody else to have the same crazy idea. Okay, so to get back to the minimalist ethic, the basic premise is any behavior is okay as long as I'm not hurting anyone. So the reductio is peeping Tom, sexual assault while someone is unconscious, or necrophilia all survive this test, but are clearly immoral.
They survived this test?
Yeah, because they're not hurting anyone. So the minimalist ethic is not an adequate moral system. Okay,
That kind of goes with what they don't know won't hurt.
yeah, and is that true?
Nope.
Nope,
I wouldn't
not
say-
necessarily.
I wouldn't so.
It always
Look
comes
at
back.
that.
It always comes back to.
Don't ever say that.
Right,
Mama don't know. It
Yeah.
won't hurt.
okay,
What stays in Vegas?
right,
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
right. So let's look at another example conversation between a non-Christian and a Christian. So the non-Christian says morals are relative and are nothing more than personal preferences. So the Christian says, if that's the case, then wouldn't it simply be a matter of personal preference to kill a hungry child rather than to feed her? Yes, that should be feed her, not fee her. On your view, either choice is morally allowed, right?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
But you don't say what he don't have an answer.
No, I mean, we
Yeah.
could go all over the place with
Yeah.
this, but it's just trying to help you get used to the principles that we're looking at here. So morals are relative and are nothing more than personal preferences. So if that's the case, then wouldn't it simply be a matter of personal preference to kill a hungry child rather than feed her? On your view, either choice is morally allowed. Let's look at another example. Sure, the unborn is alive in a sense that it's growing, but it's just a part of the mother's body.
I ain't never heard of that.
No,
No,
I
ain't
never
heard
heard of
nobody
that.
say that.
you haven't heard
Well-
it's the mother's choice because,
Well-
it's the mother's body.
Oh,
Yeah, oh,
okay,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you say it like that, yeah.
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 See, that, they don't believe it. They don't call it a baby. See, it's just cells. It's
Right.
just,
Right.
They
It's
call it a thing.
Unviable
It's
tissue mass.
unviable, yes.
They say it.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, say
They
that.
They'll say it.
it.
They'll say
That's
all
how-
kinds of
that's how
things.
they get around.
But the essence of what this gentleman is arguing is that, yeah, it's unborn, but it's just a part of the mom's body. So it's the mom's choice whether or not to kill it.
Yeah, it is, it's alive. So if it's alive, then that means it really is a baby, but he doesn't call it a baby.
Well, he's
Yeah. it's
he's
just part of the-
asserting that it's
yeah,
just a part of the
part
mom's body.
body.
Okay, so let's find out what our Christian
Okay,
apologist
let's-
says about this. I'm hoping not to offend anybody, but here we go, if we haven't done that already. If that's true, then it's possible the mother can have a male sex organ as a part, not art, as a part of her own body while she's pregnant. Does that make sense to you?
Huh?
Okay.
No,
So in essence, what that's saying, if the mom comes to you and says, it's my body, I will do what I want. Okay, if it's your body, do you have a male appendage? And if she says no, then is it possible the baby inside you has a male appendage? Yes. Then how can that be a part of your body if you don't have a male appendage and it does?
okay. Okay. The way you explain, but I'm going.
So this is following that idea to its absurd conclusion. It's possible that this baby has genitalia that you don't have.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yes, but what you
Uh,
wrote up there
No.
doesn't make as much sense as what you
No.
said.
Okay, I apologize.
Well, it's not your fault.
I'm still not getting it. In a quick way.
Okay,
Maybe, if I remember, if I even remember what you just said.
yeah, well, I'm hoping not to have to get any more base in my terminology than I've gone, because I will be uncomfortable doing so.
Did you make it up?
Did I make it up? No, ma'am, it's right from the book.
That's that incorrect.
Yeah, I have used a form of that argument, but this one is right from the book.
The form of the argument, maybe that makes more sense.
Well, it uses more base language and I'd prefer not to do that. I don't want to come out and say it.
That part I understand.
Okay,
Anatomy, I understand, yes. I get that.
all right. Okay, so let's look at, let's try a couple of examples on our own. First up, the basic premise, there are no objective moral obligations. What would be the reductio to such a claim?
I don't know what objective moral obligations. I don't know what objective means in that.
Okay, let me ask you this. Is it wrong to torture a baby for fun?
No. Okay.
No?
For fun or any
It's wrong.
Right. I'm
Oh,
sorry,
objective
Mrs. Yu, did you
to
say
have
something?
Objections too. Okay.
Well, follow me on this. Okay, so is it wrong to torture a baby for fun?
Absolutely, it's wrong.
Absolutely, it's wrong, yes.
Yeah.
So please, thank you. Yes, it's interesting. Is there anybody who disagrees with that? Could anybody make a legitimate case for disagreeing with it?
Nutty or no fruit.
Right. So that is an objective moral value that we all share. A subjective moral value is, I disagree with drinking. Does anyone like to imbibe once in a while on alcohol? You don't have to admit we're in church or at a church function. So there are other people who like to drink alcohol.
Right.
All right. So that's a subjective moral claim.
Okay.
That's, because I choose not to do it, doesn't mean it's wrong for you.
Right. Okay.
So that's the difference. So there are no objective moral obligations. And I think that hopefully we all understand. So the reductio for this one would be stealing or any other behavior is not objectively wrong.
Like killing people
Like killing
at
people.
will.
Absolutely. Killing people at will. Invading sovereign nations just because they're next door.
So the premise is saying that is no, nothing that we can do that is wrong.
Well, they're saying there's no objective wrong, which means that might be wrong for you, but it's not wrong for me.
Yeah. Objective means
Right.
it's good for everybody.
Objective means, yeah, it stands
Okay.
true for everybody without reservation.
Okay.
But if somebody comes to you and says to you that there are no objective moral obligations, your response to that is stealing or any other behavior is not objectively wrong. And if they say, yes, that's right, then steal their car stereo and see how they feel about that. Because I guarantee you that they'll have a problem with it.
Catch me outside.
Yeah, exactly. So the truth is, there must be some moral absolutes. Does that make sense? All right, let's try another one. Let's look at atheistic evolution. So the basic premise is, or someone comes up to you and says, we are governed only by the natural process of evolution. So what would be the reductio for that? Where could you take that if somebody used this against you?
How'd you come up with that conclusion?
That's the
No,
Columbo
that-
question.
That's a Columbo. That's
Yeah,
not a.
that's a Columbo.
Yeah. So you gotta come to a,
How do we get here?
to the. we are
Yeah, that would be a good
governed
Columbo question,
natural.
but that's not reducing their objection to the absurd. Following their logic, where would you end up with something like that?
I'm not a chess player.
Oh, that's okay. All right, how about this? How about if they told you that we are governed only by the natural process of evolution? What's one thing that we know about evolution? What's, everybody says this about evolution. Survival of the fittest, right? So if that's the case, that we are only governed by the natural process of evolution, then the strong are permitted to oppress the weak, right? Because it's survival of the fittest.
Exactly.
Because I'm bigger, stronger than you, I can do whatever I want,
Mhm.
right?
That's
If you're bigger and stronger than me, I've got no complaint when you beat me up and take my wallet.
exactly.
Yeah. Right. So the truth is, evolution is not an adequate explanation for morality. God must exist to ground obvious ethical duties.
Is obvious intended there? Or the intended word?
I think it was obvious. Ground obvious ethical duties. Do you disagree with that?
Only because some of the duties don't seem obvious. Like it doesn't seem obvious what is and what is not the right thing to do in a certain situation. Like some things are more complicated than others.
Sure, yeah. But there are clearly obvious ones, like
There are.
oppressing the weak just because you're stronger than mom.
Evolution doesn't
It's-
really have anything, to me, it doesn't have anything to do with morality,
The whole might is right. Thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
might is right.
I just don't put them in the same. Evolution is kind of like physical, and morality is spiritual.
Well, to an evolutionist, all of these things have evolved over time.
Oh,
So
okay.
if,
Okay, I see. what you
right,
mean.
because there is no
So we started out.
there's no
animals,
lawgiver.
And we just became human. I mean,
We
and that,
became
and all along
human
that, along with becoming human, we brought morality. We
as a
achieved
process,
morality.
right? As a process of us, moving up the food chain.
Interesting.
Somewhere along the line, we developed some kind of moral code.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, and they'll talk about, governing in societies and all these kinds of things, but I can tell you that there are a couple of things that I think are evolutionarily, strategically advantageous, like not having any morals. If this is truly how we evolve and reproduce ourselves, then the strong surviving would be a principle that we had. I think also sexual reproduction is disadvantageous to evolution because of all the rigmarole we have to do to engage and to reproduce. Wouldn't it be easier if I just split in half asexual reproduction?
Yeah.
So I think those are going the wrong direction. So that's going a different direction. So I'll move on. All right, let's talk about modified pro-choice stance. So the modified pro-choice stance says, like, if it's not all right for me, but you do whatever you want. So the basic premise is abortion should be legal, even though the politician personally believes it kills an innocent baby. So a politician says, I am not going to vote against Roe v. Wade. I don't believe in abortion because I think it kills a baby, but what you do is okay. If you want an abortion, then it's okay. We should have it legal. So how could we reduce that to its absurd conclusion?
I believe in murder.
If I'm mad at my husband, I might as well kill him.
That's exactly true. You know, yeah. And I'm a little concerned that both of you jumped right to murder.
That's what abortion is.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Jumping very far,
I
they're
know.
just going from inside the womb to outside the womb.
Well, yeah. And what's the magic that happens, you know, in the birth canal versus outside of the birth canal?
Exactly.
I would argue nothing.
So if you want to kill somebody, you gotta push them back up in the.
Well, you know, in
Okay.
That sounds like
Yeah.
a combat.
Ouch.
well, there is, have you ever heard of a partial birth abortion?
I didn't until I read it. I never heard.
Yeah.
I never heard that before.
I didn't know there was such a thing.
Oh, yeah. It's horrifying.
What is it?
A partial birth abortion is an abortion that could be done all the way up until the time of birth. So what it does is it induces contractions.
Is that legal?
It is. Yeah. So what they do is they turn the baby around in the mother's womb, and they are forced to give birth all the way up into the head. They leave the head in the birth canal, and then they kill the baby from there.
Excuse me?
So the body is outside, the head is
So
inside.
the head's inside, so it suffocates.
No,
No.
no, they actually stick forceps in the back of the neck and cut the spinal cord.
Ugh.
So
And we do, and that's legal
it happens every single day, hundreds of times
in this country?
in this country. Yes, ma'am.
Land of the free.
Oh my God. No, I had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cause it's been so
I've
long
never
since
heard that before in my life. So now,
Me either.
no, I
It's-
mean, I heard
Lord have
I
mercy.
heard, I read the thing about part, but I didn't know what it entailed.
Right.
I had no clue.
Right. So what they're saying is that, you know, that's okay. Hey, it's not, I would never do it, but it's okay for you to do it. So that's what this basic premise is saying. So the reductio is mothers should be allowed to kill their children, even if some of us disapprove. I would never kill my kid, but if you want to kill your kid, then that's fine. Right?
That doesn't even make sense.
No,
It
Well,
doesn't make sense.
None of it makes sense.
but that's taking their
Yeah, I
argument.
mean, I mean,
Morally.
it's the same,
Right.
I mean,
for some
you're
reason.
killing a child.
You are
You're
killing
a
them.
person.
Right. You are killing a person. So the modified pro-choice position is barbaric. At its conclusion, it's absolutely barbaric.
Modified pro-
What kind of person
Whoa.
champions the right to kill what she actually believes is an innocent human child?
just
So if
because-
you hear a
just
politician
because
say,
it's inconvenient for you or the person.
or because it'll get you votes.
No, I'm saying the person kills that way
No,
because
Politician is what.
the,
he's
yeah,
saying.
the politician is going, yeah,
Always gotta walk that line.
yeah.
Trying to make you happy. I don't try to make you happy. You go down a little.
Right.
Politician.
Yep.
Stick one.
I don't
That's why I don't
vote.
vote.
I don't get involved in politics.
You should vote, because if you don't, someone else is. And they're
Yeah,
probably
I
voting
like
for the
Yeah,
wrong people.
I don't, I'm sorry, I just don't.
Hey,
I don't
Christians,
get involved in politics.
That's what,
Christians need to be involved in politics because you can see the direction this company's going and it's not in a Christianly direction.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think,
you never quite know.
but the bad, yeah, the bad part is
But
that even when you vote, and because, you know, this is what they say,
they may do something different,
you know.
sure. Right.
they end up, you know, because
We all might. get
politicians,
bamboozled.
politics is all about compromise. And, oh, I need this, well, I'll vote for your
Mhm.
whatever.
Right.
That's what,
But you can see the power when you do that. It makes that has come across and how it got someone in the office. You can see the power. when you come
Absolutely.
Together, so, yeah.
Absolutely.
I know there's probably so many laws out there that we stood on them as a Christian. I would not be there. Including myself. Yeah,
Amen.
so.
That is absolutely correct.
But how that may be so, but, to me, it's kind of conflicting. To me, it's just crazy. You know, you vote, you do all of this, you know, but then those people you vote for, like you say, end up doing something totally different.
Mhm.
So is it a sin if you vote or don't vote? If you don't vote, is it a sin?
I wouldn't say it's a sin, but I
So
would
why
say,
is it morally right to vote? Why do you have to vote? What difference does it make? I hear what's being said,
Mhm.
but when you go vote and you do all that voting, so you can make a difference or whatnot, and then that difference ain't made, then what happens?
well, that means too many people who were of the Christian mindset stayed home
Yeah,
and didn't.
and that can be discouraging for somebody that votes.
I
you
know.
and
I
you
know
so
that that's why
like
every one of us
conflicting.
should be out there making an educated vote.
right.
And, you know, I say that advisedly, make an educated vote.
Right.
Don't
I
just-
just
My
don't, 'cause
problem
I
is
don't
that
understand
if
none of
there's-
this stuff,
if-
so I
if
don't
neither
get into
are
politics
both-
like that.
I
Both
don't
of
know
the,
either.
both of the people that are
I don't-
running
I
are
don't-
terrible. I'm going,
Mhm.
now what do I do?
Right. But I,
That's why I didn't vote that, you know,
Right.
that's
I
why I
know
vote, I
that's
haven't voted
why
in
you
a
stay
lot of,
away
because
from
I'm
it.
going, the lesser of two evils, I mean, you know, just,
yeah,
I
well,
felt like.
the lesser of two evils is still less evil than the other. I mean, there
No, but
are
I mean,
times when there's no
you know,
good
the thing
choices.
about a big sin or a little, I mean, I think
Right.
they're both craps.
Right. I know.
But what if you do stand together and vote and you get to see?
Yeah, oh, I
You
know.
can't control what they do. in
No, that,
office.
I know,
Right.
that's what
But you
I,
can do what you can do to get them in there. So if you
Exactly.
do it, that's all you. can
that's
do.
why
The rest is
I've
up to-
changed my mind, you know,
And
because
I-
yeah, that's why I'm, you know, there was so long that I go, I don't know these people, I don't know, you know, I read but, you know, they're talking out of this side of their, you know.
and you're gonna have that.
And
So,
so I'm going, oh, but when I didn't vote and somebody I totally didn't like got in, I'm going, but it might have been just because I didn't vote.
it's entirely
You know,
possible.
That's why I had to
But I
go
think,
the other direction.
I think in this country, we are losing the culture war because Christians are abdicating their responsibility. They're saying, I'm not gonna vote. I'm not gonna run for office. I'm not gonna get into the sciences. I'm not gonna get into education. So all of those people, the people who fill those positions have the wrong worldview and are driving the country in the wrong direction. So when Christians stay at home and don't get involved in these things, then, you know, it's no wonder that in the book of Revelation, there's no sign of America there. All right. Not chasing another rabbit. So let's talk about capital punishment. The basic premise is, or somebody comes to you and says, if Jesus would forgive, then we have no right to execute murderers. What would be the reductio there? How would you respond to that in a way that show the logical conclusion, if played out, that would lead to?
Oh, I read it.
There's still consequences to your behavior.
Mhm.
So.
Dad's fixing an ear of corn.
Say, oh, well, you would forgive you. Chopped his head off and killed him and stabbed him. Okay, well, he would forgive you.
but you still gotta pay for that at the end of the day.
Right. But what would be like a logical conclusion of that? So if Jesus would forgive,
I could
we have
cheat
no
and-
right to
I can
execute
cheat
murderers.
and read out of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got the book.
Because he said, even though Jesus might forgive murderers, it does not mean it is wrong for the government to punish them.
Mhm. So the logical conclusion to that is that no punishment of any kind would be justified. Right? Because Jesus forgives us of all of our sins if we belong to him.
Right.
On this reasoning, it would be wrong for the government to punish any criminals, because one could always say Jesus would forgive.
Right.
This seems absurd, especially when scripture states that the purpose of government is to punish evildoers, not forgive them.
Mhm. Right. So the truth is, the fact that Jesus would forgive does not mean that governments should not punish.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And you're absolutely right. In the Bible, it talks about governments are set up
Yeah, to make it right.
to maintain the peace and
Yeah.
to, to judge the people.
So in other words, the death penalty is legal.
The death penalty,
By the
well,
Bible. It's supposed to happen,
capital punishment, yeah.
so capital punishment is a death penalty, right?
Yes,
So to say you don't believe in it is saying what?
But you don't support it.
yeah, you don't support capital punishment.
Is that the
Yeah, but
same as
there's-
saying
it
you don't
just-
support the
Just
Bible
because you
saying
don't,
capital punishment is necessary? Is that what it's saying?
Oh, so say, she's asking if you say that you don't support the death penalty, are you also
No,
against
say-
what the Bible says
saying that we
about
shouldn't
capital death
punish them?
I would guess that somebody who is against capital punishment is also against what the Bible says about capital punishment. That's my guess. Now, I will say this too, that there's a lot of problems with our judicial system. And
Yeah.
sometimes we're killing people we ought not be killing,
Mhm.
and that needs to be remedied. But to say that capital punishment's off the table, I would say is absolutely wrong. There's a lot of people out there who we know did a lot of
Yeah, I
horrible
think I-
things,
I
and we
think
keep
I
them
wanna
alive
s-
for
I-
30 or 40
I want to
years.
send these
Yeah.
people upstairs and let them talk to Jesus right now. Yeah, go ahead, send them,
Yeah.
let them have their little chat with Jesus
There-
now.
There's a lot of people that only have a down button on the elevator. All right, so speaking of down elevators, let's talk about the polarity of good and evil. The basic premise is evil and good exist in polarity, balancing each other out. So in order to have good, you must have evil, is what it's saying. Because without evil, there is no good. So these two balance each other out. You have to have evil so you can have good.
No, because God is good all the time. Sin is evil. Like, but at this,
So how would you follow this to its absurd conclusion?
I might as well do all the evil I want because good will just balance it out.
Yeah,
Somebody's gonna come along and write it out, huh?
yeah. Well, let's look at it this way. So children must suffer in India to maintain a balance with the children in America who are happy. So for every happy kid, you must have a kid who's suffering.
So we're just gonna send our unhappiness somewhere else.
Right. But isn't that kind of where this leads?
Mm.
So if that's the case, then it's okay that kids in India are suffering.
So I see a contradiction between this and what we talked about last time with the Colombo tactic. The example that was given for the problem of evil. If the basic premise here is going to be that evil and good exist in polarity, balancing out each other, and then the reductio is that children must suffer, then what he is implicitly saying is that suffering isn't evil. Which we go back to the problem of evil. Remember when we had the conversation
Mhm.
about there's a contradiction. So he's equating suffering with evil and happiness with good.
That's true. That's true. Well, and
Sorry.
no, that's a good
Don't
point,
mock me,
though.
I'm just a philosopher, but that's
Right.
something that I immediately noticed, like, oh, so you're acknowledging that suffering is evil. So now you have to give justification for the presence of evil or the presence of suffering in the world.
Right. So in this case, they would say that suffering in the world exists so that other people can be happy.
Mhm.
It's that balancing act.
And that you get to choose who it's gonna be. You get to choose.
I want to be happy, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it over on them,
Well,
suffering
and
on them.
I don't know. I don't know how I would feel about the fact if every time something good happens to me, something bad's got to happen to somebody else.
Yeah,
I think I would be of the mindset that I feel guilty about that and I don't want anything good to happen to me because I don't want anybody else to be hurt.
right,
That's just me.
yeah.
I
So
have that same mindset too.
Yeah.
I don't like to see no one suffer.
Is it not true?
Yeah. So it is not true that evil and good must coexist so they can balance each other out.
I don't mean to take away from it, but this just seems to, again, go back to the problem of evil, because the theodicy is that good is like you won't know good unless there's evil and so on. But this seems to say that it's not true that you must have evil for every good or good for every evil. So how do you reconcile those two?
Well, this is exactly what it's saying. The person who espouses this, evil and good exist in polarity, balancing each other out. So you've got to have both, and you have to have both equally. So
How is that different from the theodicy that people give for the problem of evil, that evil doesn't exist on its own, it's just a privation of good? That seems to be saying the same thing to me.
well, I don't know that they're the same. So the one thought is, and we did talk about this last week, week before, something like that, but evil is not a thing in and of itself. Evil is a privation of good. So where there's lacking good, there is evil. Just like a shadow is not a thing in and of itself. It's a privation of light. And a donut hole is not a thing in of itself. It's an absence of a donut.
I like that story you said.
Yeah.
Over with the donuts and the kids got
Yeah.
mad.
That didn't win me any favors.
But
You
usually
weren't
we'll
put
go-
on the best teacher in the world.
No, I didn't
usually
get a
what goes
prize.
along with the privation of good argument is that you can only know good because evil is present. And that's that's the similarity that I'm seeing between that statement and the basic premise that we're talking about here.
Right.
If you're saying that evil must exist in order to know good or what the good is, it's eerily close to evil and good exist in polarity, balancing out each other.
I don't see the equivocation there. What I'm reminded of is C.S. Lewis said, one must have an idea of straight before they can know what's crooked. So because you know what's good, you recognize evil. That doesn't mean they both have to exist. But because we know the perfect God, we can recognize the imperfect, us.
And polarity means is that they're balanced, that there's
Right.
equal amounts,
Equal.
whereas in the beginning, there was no evil. Or according to there wasn't evil until Lucifer decided, no, I don't think God knows everything. I think I want to be in charge.
Mhm.
But that happened for consequences. It didn't happen so that you
Yeah.
just take it away. So here's all this good. Let's have a great time with doing all this stuff in the garden.
Yeah.
And someone decides, hey, I'm gonna do what he told me not to do. And now evil is present.
Right,
So
right.
it doesn't
do
take
you-
away all the good. It
No,
doesn't say that you need this for that. It recognizes you're able to see that this is evil now. And therefore our eyes are all completely open to know and recognize the difference between one and the other. Because when you need one or the other, it means that now you can recognize it.
Did Adam know and appreciate the good when he was created?
oh, yeah.
So you can
That's all
have,
there,
so you can have good without
Good
evil.
without
Yeah,
the
there-
evil.
that's all
Also-
there-
You can also have an appreciation for good
there was,
Absolutely.
that's all there was
Right.
good.
Yeah, and did
See
we?
it through those spiritual eyes.
You saying that reminds me of this funny debate between these two guys on social media about whether fish in water is wet. And I don't want to get into it here, but it is the funniest thing. And I don't know if they realize it, but it's a really good philosophical discussion. Because what one guy is arguing is that a fish is not wet because its entire life, a fish in water is not wet because in the water it's surrounded by nothing but water. That it's not wet until it gets on dry land and then you touch the fish and feel that it's wet. But in the water, if all the fish knows is the water, then it's not wet. You should look it up. I'm not gonna get into it here, but it's a really good
That's
philosophical
weird.
discussion.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
Well-
reminds me of when I
Or it
said
doesn't-
water wet.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, of course it is.
well, when does water
Definition is
become
not
wet?
wet.
Yeah,
Oh, my God, I got
yeah.
it.
Where I have a lack of appreciation for fish is they live in their own toilet, so.
So I take it you don't eat seafood.
I'm not a huge fan.
Mm.
Not a huge fan, but that's just me.
Yeah, but they
I
wash
eat
it.
it every blue moon.
All right, so we are out of time, and so let's do,
Right on time with the
Oh,
recap.
wait a minute, hold on. So we're gonna end on the fish comment.
oh boy, JP wants to weigh in on the fish comment.
No, I don't want to weigh on the fish comment. I'm saying we're ending this session on the fish comment.
Yes, sir. Is it wrong?
It was wrong on so many levels. Chris.
Yeah, all right.
I feel like that's a very Schaefer-esque way to play us out.
Yeah, just consider yourself pushed off the bridge.
It's a good discussion. I love it.
Yeah,
Because one guy gets so angry that he takes his shirt off and he's like, flexing his muscles and everything because he's like, no, the fish is wet. And the other guy's like, no, it's not. It's so hilarious. Both of them are being dead serious about this. But this inconsequential matter, right? About whether a fish is and the water is wet.
no, well, I think some of these may seem silly, but I think it's a good exercise of your brain and just to think
Oh,
through
you
these
can't
things.
take all the way, I mean,
Well, if
come on now.
I was in the
Yeah.
water, I'd be wet, so what difference is between me and the fish?
Right,
Because when you get out of the water, you're exposed to air. So now that you're exposed, like you're only wet until you're only wet when you're
When you're-
exposed to air.
Oh,
So a fish that's been in water in this entire life, how is it wet?
But there's-
I was like, I don't wanna
but
be-
there's air in the water. There's air in the water.
yeah, all right,
Are the fish would be able to breathe?
all right, so.
Abby's about to take her shirt off and start flexing. You got to be careful.
Oh, nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. All right, so let's recap, and then if we want to talk about fish and wetness,
Don't pull your shirt off.
You don't get to worry.
yeah. All right, so we learned the taking the roof off tactic. We adopt the other person's viewpoint for the sake of argument, and then we press them to the logical or absurd consequences of their view. We learned 3 steps to employ the taking the roof off tactic, which is we reduce the point of view to its basic premise. Then we give the idea a test drive to determine whether the absurd consequences result when this view is consistently applied. And then we invite the other person to consider the implications of their view and the truth that follows from the reductio. Then we learned a number of ways to apply the tactic in specific challenges. And then finally, in the next session, we'll learn the last tactic in our series, an important defensive tactic Greg calls the steamroller.